Welcome back, or welcome to a bonus episode of the New Levels Coaching Podcast. I must say, sorry if you have background interference, a little bit of noise, but we are sat in one of the most iconic settings in the world of trail and mountain running. We are right in the centre of Chamonix, and if you are tuning in on video, you'll notice the backdrop behind us has the start-finish line to the famous UTMB. But we have people obviously looking in and paying attention to what we're doing. James has said, yeah, this is going to happen a lot because we kind of look famous, I guess, with our mic sat in front of the start-finish line. People can take it for what it is. But we are here to give you a bit of a preview and a bit of an insight into all things UTMB week. So the plan today is, yes, we always provide a bit of coaching, inspiration, education, but today is all about giving you a bit of a preview of all the things to come in UTMB week. So we're going to kick off with the OCC, we're going to look at the CCC, and then we're going to go to the UTMB itself. Obviously, there's a lot more going on in the week, including I'm in a race called the ETC on the Tuesday, but the three races that we're going to cover, particularly looking at the favourites, are the three main World Series finals events, and they start on Thursday morning and go all the way through to Saturday. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to my regular co-host of the Run Through Trails podcast, James Tilley, who is a recent podcaster on the NLC podcast as well. We did an athlete story. James is going to tell us a little bit more about the OCC to kick us off, because that's a race he's taking part in. I can't wait for that. And then we'll break the favourites down, have a look at who you should be looking out for when it comes to the races that are to come. So over to James to give you a bit of information about the race itself, and then we'll get into it.
Perfect. All right, nice. Yeah, so we're going to touch on all three of the World Series finals, as they're called. So starting with OCC, which, as Lewis said, I'm racing in. It comes up, 6 days from now? So Thursday, the 29th of August. It's called OCC because it starts in a little village in Switzerland called Ossier, goes through a little town called Champex-Lac, and then finishes in Chamonix. So O to C to C. It's classed as a 50k race, but actually this year it's about 58k, 58k. About 3,500 meters of climbing. It's kind of seen on the world trail running scene as a relatively runnable course, but having recce'd the entire thing over the last couple of months, runnable for some people, very technical for others. So yeah, very mixed terrain, a lot of elevation gain, 3 massive steep climbs, good technical descents, but some decent runnable sections too. And essentially, probably one of the deepest races, maybe you could argue between this and CCC, but one of the deepest races, especially on the men's side, coming up this week. So yeah, we're first going to touch on the favourite women, and then have a look at the men afterwards. So we've got the Live Trail app up here, which is great. If you're going to follow any of the races, make sure you download Live Trail and utilise that. It's really, really good. So favourite for the race, or at least highest UTMB index score female, is Judith Wider. So Judith actually, we met in Sweden at the Cullinan race. I think she placed second in the 50k that I did, so we had a nice little chat on the stage. She's been running really well this year. She won Marathon de Mont Blanc not too long ago. I think she rocked up at Sierre-Zinal, and maybe did she DNF at Sierre-Zinal?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think she was a bit ill. I think she picked up an illness going into Sierre-Zinal, which will be interesting because that wasn't that long ago. So it's going to be interesting to see if she's recovered. What I find fascinating about Judith's story is she went out to Sweden for the same reason as what you did, to try and qualify for this race, which was about 9-10 months ago now, and she did qualify. Judith is used to this square because she won recently here at Marathon de Mont Blanc. Bit shorter, not as much climbing, so it'll be interesting to see as she does step up, because she hasn't really done many of the longer races. If you compare her to somebody like Clementine Jeffrey there from France, who won the Europeans recently, the race that you were in, she's a very, very well established athlete, got good pedigree over the longer distances. Danny Moreno's podiumed here before. She's an American athlete. She's ranked third in terms of those UTMB points. Then you've got people like Miao Yao, who did well here last year as well, was actually leading that race out ahead of Tony McCann. So lots and lots of interest all the way down the field. What has interested me a little bit about the women's field in particular is there's been a couple of scratches, or what I'd call a couple of movers. So people like Tony McCann, who won here last year, she's moved to the CCC, which means we don't have either of last year's winners, because we don't have Tony McCann here to defend her title, and we don't have Stian Angermund here because he tested positive. Unfortunately, he's going through the appeals process. But we do have James Francesco Puppi, who was second. But are we saying for the sake of today that he is defending champion because of that positive drugs test?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he put out a post, I think, on Instagram yesterday, a couple of days ago, kind of maybe he's not had the best last couple of months in terms of training. He's talked a lot about it on social media, if you follow any of that, or if you listen to his podcast, The Long Run, which is really good. But yeah, I think undoubtedly we have to see him at this point as the reigning champion. It's difficult because Stian's obviously queried those positive results from last year, but it's all gone a bit quiet. I don't follow it that closely. In my mind, Poopy's the champion from last year until proven differently, although he's not been in the best form. He had some really good races at the start of the year. He's an incredible climber. Background as more of an uphill guy. His descending has improved massively, and he's a very fast flat runner too. He had some really good cross-country results earlier this year. So, I mean, he has to be one of the favourites, no doubt. And then obviously, well, I'm going to throw one other female name in the mix there, Sarah Alonso. We didn't actually get down to. We're flicking through this Live Trail app, and they've seeded the runners by UTMB index, which is kind of like a point system, similar to Run Britain, how they would kind of give you like a seeded score based on your PBs, but this is based on UTMB series races people have competed in. And like that top 10 women's, they're all within 10 points on the UTMB index, which is ridiculous. It's so tight. But Sarah Alonso, big name in the Golden Trail series, one of the fastest runners over shorter distances, Spanish athlete, and pretty exciting to watch race. So I'm keen to see her step up. And in the same way, looking at the top of the men's now, the top seed with 948 UTMB index points, which 1,000 is perfection. So 948 is pretty damn good. Remy Bonnet. So Remy also, like Sarah, kind of stepping up. I'm sure he has done some longer races before. He's obviously had a lot of success at races like Marathon de Mont Blanc and a lot of the Golden Trail series. He's kind of seen as like one of the strongest uphill runners in the world, right now at least. Didn't have the result he wanted at Sierre now recently. Went out hard with the front three, with the two Kenyan runners and with Killian, who ended up having an absolute battle and dropped back to about 9th, blew up a little bit. Remy did take second at Marathon de Mont Blanc a couple of months back in June, but having won that the previous year and being the athlete that he is, I imagine he probably wasn't particularly happy with that either. So yeah, Remy definitely one to watch, but the question is, and we've been chatting about this, is he going to go out hard or is he going to kind of rein it in a little bit and take his time? I don't know what you think.
Well, I think what's interesting is there's quite a lot of what we classify as the shorter athletes now making that step up. So you mentioned Sarah Alonso and Remy there. Sarah won the, Sarah or Sarah, depending on how you pronounce it, of course, won the ETC last year, which is the event I'm doing. So short and sharp, 15K up and down, but a big step up to that 50K. Remy, notoriously good over the shorter, especially those climbing courses. And as you say, renowned as one of the best climbers in the world, but did have a good run here at Marathon de Mont Blanc. Didn't win, but was right up there and in the mix. So be interesting to see how he does on that course. What I find fascinating about the top two with Jonathan Albon ranked as number 2. A lot of people will be familiar with Jonathan Albon, particularly in the UK. We did a great podcast with Jonathan recently on the RunThrough Trails podcast. He's very much coming at this from a different angle. He's stepping down. He did Western States recently. He had a very good debut, despite some tricky things in the build-up. He said he got COVID before he went out there. Still manages to get top 5 out there at Western States. Comes back, but has made a decision not to do UTMB because that's what he was entered for. And now we see him on the OCC start list. And that's intriguing for me because I'm thinking, one, he's coming down the distances, but is he thinking, oh, I'm just not recovered from Western States and that's why I'm doing the shorter one. But shorter doesn't always mean better because that means faster and sometimes harder. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, James, because you're in this race. You're going to be competing against these guys. What's your thoughts on John being on that start list?
I mean, John, being the athlete he is, could obviously have an incredible run and blow everyone out of the water on the right day. Previous CCC winner. I mean, he's got the speed. There's no question. I think from chatting to him on our podcast, his legs were a bit trashed after Western States. He's not recovered how he wanted to. He was entered into UTMB. Got to factor in with all these guys as well, the professional athletes who have responsibilities to their brands, and I have known nothing behind the scenes on that side of things, but it could even be a case of, well, it's UTMB weekend. You've got to do one of the races. So you're going to do the one that's going to do the least damage to your body, and then you can roll on to whatever's coming next after that. So it might just be that. John's not one to come and just jog a race. So if he wasn't going to race, I don't think he'd be on the start list. So it's interesting. And he's obviously in there because his score's ridiculously high. We touched on Poopy, obviously last year's winner, great runner. So he's in there with a chance for sure. And then it brings us on to Eli Hemming, who's someone who we chatted personally a lot about start of the year. So I first came across Eli. He's an ex-triathlete. very high-end triathlete, I think. I don't know the details of his previous career, but very good athlete. But I saw him come in second place to Remy in Marathon de Mont Blanc last year on the stream, and he just moving really well. He wasn't a name that I was that aware of, and then actually listened to the Boulder Boys podcast for the previous year. They talk a lot about Eli because he's been a big name in the US this year, and he's had some massive results. He's gone a little bit quiet recently, which, who knows? It could be injury, it could be tapering down and aiming for OCC as the big goal race. But for me, Eli, he'd be a bit of a dark horse for favourite. I mean, he's not that much of a dark horse, right? He's like third seed. You've just flicked over some of his past results, so I'll let you kind of touch on some of those.
Yeah, so the Canyons run at the start of the year where he finished first, he was second at Broken Arrow. Like, he had really good form, which is when we were talking about him early on, like Black Canyons as well. And it wasn't just that he was winning impressively as well. Like such good times, looking good. But then he's gone quiet, which either means he's peaking for this race and he's gone away and done a big training block, or things haven't gone according to plan and he's not been able to race as much as he wanted to. Either way, he's on the start list. He's going to be here. For me, he's one of the big race favourites. Other people to point out, I think Antonio Martinez Perez, famously winning the race a couple of years ago until that last descent. He got up to La Flagey in the lead, and then he started to cramp on that descent into the finish, and he got past. He still managed to finish in the top three. He was in the top three here last year. He paced his race incredibly well, although he'll be first to admit he just said he couldn't go with the hot pace at the start. So he hung back and he came through the field. I believe he was somewhere like 19th at one point in the men's race, managed to get himself up to third, which is absolutely incredible. Got himself on that podium. And then if we look at the British interest in there as well, somebody who's had great success here in the past, Robbie Simpson, his score's still over 900. He's podiumed here. He's been second and third. I think he was sixth last year. And then we've got somebody who was on the Run Through Trails podcast with us just recently, Chris Jones, who I think is a little bit of a dark horse here. I don't think many people will look at Chris. He's a little bit lower down in terms of the rankings with only 888 as his score. But I know with his background, particularly in running and looking at the course he's done well on in the past, particularly at Worlds, just finishing him behind Francesco Puppi when he went to the Worlds that time, I think he is a good shout, and I think he's getting used to these longer distances. So I'm really interested to see how Chris does, see how Robbie does, and how they mix it with those other guys on that start list, as well as yourself, James, because you're another Brit that's in there, as well as, I believe Brennan's on there as well. Brennan Townsend, we'll give Brennan a shout out.
I mean, everyone's here, man. It's ridiculous. All these names we're talking about, we've been just passing in town or on the trails the last couple of days. So it is a weird place to be this week because the entire trail running world just descends. But yeah, Antonio Martino Perez, just one of those guys who seems to just run excellent splits, especially last year. He had some of the best pacing that we've talked about before. And yeah, Chris Jones, bit of a dark horse. So anyway, let's move on to CCC. I mean, actually, quickly, before we do, to put it into context, I'm 60th seed on that list, I think. Chris was down there as like 23rd. The depth is just absolutely insane. Any other race anywhere else in the world, Chris Jones turns up, he's a favourite to win it, and he's 20th seed, so it's mental. So CCC, Courmayeur to Champex-Lac to Chamonix. So it's almost 2/3 of the UTMB route, basically. The finish for OCC is a little bit different. It comes down through Latour and into Chamonix a slightly different way, whereas CCC and UTMB pretty much follow the exact same route in, as far as I'm aware. 100k, 5,500+ meters of elevation, similar sort of technicality to OCC. And looking at the favourites here, top of the list, Adam Peterman from the US, as well as Peter Engdahl, previous winner and I believe course record holder. Peter, got to get these pronunciations right. Petter had a decent run at Western States, but probably not one he's massively happy with. We watched a little documentary recently. He took a bit of a fall and ran back through the field, but unbelievable athlete. So let's see how he comes back after a couple of injuries from like a crash on his bike and different stuff this year. We've got Manuel Morillas, who famous for carrying his wooden poles. Totally different style of runner, but also very experienced. He's been on the scene for a long time. Very strong. Down onto Hayden Hawks, also from the US. Probably doesn't need much of an introduction. He's had a great year this year as well. Let me just flick over and see for Hayden. I know he's had some big results this year. So 3rd place at Western States. He won the 100k at Black Canyon, and he won the 50k at the Canyons Endurance Run, just to name a few from this year. So yeah, Hayden's in form.
Yeah, and what's fascinating for me about the CCC is Hayden, very good run, as you say, at Western, finished 3rd. behind Rod Farvard, who's also in here. Obviously, the winner, Jim Walmsley, goes in the men's main race, the UTMB. Just behind Hayden at Western States, Dan Jones, his training partner. They're very good friends now, do a lot of training together. A lot of these big names from Western States are here to run in the CCC. So they've gone, okay, I don't want to do the double, the famous double that a lot of people have spoken about. It's never been cracked on the men's side. Nobody's ever done the Western States and UTMB full race double. Obviously, it's been done on the women's side. Courtney did that ridiculous treble last year, the Triple Crown. But a lot of these guys have decided to come here to do the CCC. And this, for me, is a stacked field, both on the men's side and on the women's side. So if we look at the women's field on this side as well and go right to the top, Tony McCann, 801 points. Really interesting, I would say, addition, because when I first looked at the CCC this year, I thought, oh, it's wide open. You know, a lot of girls ranked of a similar score, you know, 769, Heather Jackson, Rosanna Bashir from Germany, 768. And I thought, oh, these are all close together. And then all of a sudden, Tony McCann appears on the CCC list, originally down for OCC, won the OCC last time. I guess the big question here, James, is can she step up to that longer distance? We know that she's had to combine cross-training in the past with the mileage that she does. She does a lot on the bike. We watched that documentary about her the other day. So will that volume on the bike help her as she steps up the distance? And interestingly now, who's she coached by? Mr. Tom Evans, who is very well known over the longer distances.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, right person to have in your corner for when you're stepping up in distance. I mean, I want to say yes, because she ran so well at OCC last year. She's had some great results this year, although all shorter distance. I don't know if it's the longest race she's ever done, because obviously these guys they're racing all the time. She could have gone and done a 100k race in the past for training or whatever, but in terms of big profile races, Tony McCann, this will be her first time on this type of stage. And yeah, that for me is one of the big stories, just to see how she does. I'll back her. I think she's incredible. We've also now got Heather Jackson, 7th place at Western States this year, and what should I win a 100 miler at the Javelina 100, which is actually like a very competitive race. That's like you got to look at times with these races, because we're talking about going from Western States to CCC, and you think, oh, they're doing a 100 miler and then dropping down to 100k, but it's about the same sort of time. And her time there at that Javelina 100, 14 hours, so that's a flat runnable 100 mile. CCC is going to take her that long. I don't know the women's sort of course record time at CCC, but I would imagine it's in that realm. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head. I think it would be sort of in the 14s or so. But anyway, it's close enough. Yeah. So it's that amount of elevation, though. 6,000 meters over 100k is significant, and the type of terrain we're dealing with. So yeah, I mean, moving on from CCC into UTMB. So obviously the big boy, the gantry behind us here is where all the races finish, but it's UTMB that starts here as well. They do the full loop of Mont Blanc. So UTMB, Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc, it's based on a really famous hiking path, the Trail de Mont Blanc. If you've not read the book, and I've forgotten the title of the book because I bought it last year and read it, there's a really good book about the Poletti family and how they established the UTMB race and why, and the whole kind of history behind it. Basically, people used to do this Tour de Mont Blanc as a multi-day hike, and all of a sudden, someone decided, let's give it a go in a day. Realized it was potentially possible, at least over a span of a couple of days in a single push. And then it slowly became a relay event, and then this full thing event. And it's by far the most famous trail run in the world right now, alongside something like Western States. So leaving Chamonix, full lap of Mont Blanc and all the way back into Cham. So you're looking at 170k, 10,000 meters of climbing. Absolutely brutal. Through the night, the fastest guys are now doing it in about 20 hours or so, aren't they? So even those guys, they're spending a full night out there in the dark. And I'm going to pass over to you so we can have a chat through some of the stronger runners in the men's field.
Yeah, well, before I go into the men's, I'm going to touch on the women's, because the only reason is because we've got Katie Scheid here this year, who has got a good record here at UTMB in the past, as we hear a bit of a dog barking in the background. So apologies if you're getting that background interference, particularly if you're listening in rather than watching it on the live on YouTube. She is now stepping back up to UTMB, which she's done in the past. But last year she stepped down, if you remember rightly. So she finished second at the OCC behind Tony McCann. This year she's won Western States, and for a long period of that Western States run was on course record pace. In my opinion, went out a little bit too hard and paid for that later on. And then kind of fell off Courtney's record as she went. But she comes here trying to do the double, which again, from a female perspective, would be a huge achievement. So Katie comes in as the standout favourite. I know a lot of people now see her as in Courtney's league. What is a bit of a shame is Courtney isn't here, because that for me would have been an unbelievable race. But Fuzhou Zhang, who finished second at Western States, is under the same coach as Katie Scheid. They're both coached by Jason Coop. She was second at Western States. She's lining up as well. We've got Ruth Croft in there. We've got Esther Sheerlag in there. Like, it's absolutely stacked. Ida Nielsen's in there. Emily Horgood. Lots of people who performed well at Western States this year are also going again. I know from a British interest, we have got, if I believe, one of the sisters, Fee Pascal, who we saw winning Mozart this year. So I'll hand over to you to give us a bit about Fee.
Yeah, well, I just met her recently. She was at the Trail de Hautefort. So me and Justin were up at the finish of the Trail de Hautefort, which is like a fairly local race in Morzine that I just did as a training run a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, she said, "Oh, a couple of English voices. Do you know if the 50k runners have finished yet?" And it turned out it was Fiona Pascal, and we had a nice little chat. Sounds like she had a good season leading into it, and it's obviously been her A goal for this year for the entire year. So yeah, like you say, sister of Beth, excellent athlete in her own right. So it'd be really interesting to see how she gets on with that.
Yeah, and the other one to watch for me, who's actually ranked second, and I think is the one who could challenge Katie Scheid if she's not quite recovered from Western States, is Blandine Laurendale, who was third here last year in the UTMB race. So has that experience again. I know Katie has that experience as well of going longer, but maybe isn't carrying as much fatigue into this as Katie Scheid. So it could be a huge threat at the top end. Has had some really good results. I think placed well or won here at Marathon de Mont Blanc recently in one of the shorter one, was it?
Crazy.
Yeah, stepped down. 22. So has that good range as well. She won the 22k, now stepping back up to the 100-mile distance on the Tour of Mont Blanc in the main race. It's going to be fascinating, this women's race.
She's been racing like crazy this year, just flicking through what we got. A 23k, a 58k. Bearing in mind these are all podiums, so 58k, 58k, 22k, 33k, 48k, 26k, 66k, 55k. All this year, she won all of them, apart from one where she came second. So, and that was Europeans.
And that was your race. Right. We mentioned the winner earlier, who's in the OCC. The French went 1-2 there. Yeah. They absolutely smashed it, the French ladies, in that race. So
she's on form.
She's in great form coming here, but she is stepping up the distance. So over to the men then. And last year's winner is back. Jim Walmsley won Western States. Probably had a tougher race than people thought he was going to have. You know, Rod Farthard pushed him really, really hard, and I was really impressed with that race by Rod in particular. But Jim, being the class athlete that he is, he found a way to get it done. And I think last year, for me, he's got the chip off his shoulder, the monkey's off his back. I think I'm going to put my neck on the line. I think Jim does the double. I think he's the first man to do the Western States UTMB double. He's favourite. I think with that pressure off from last year of being the first American male to get across the line in first here, I just think, yeah, he's gonna do it. Tom Evans is right behind him on the ranking points. Big British interest, and Dimitri, who's just below him, who ran together with Tom earlier on in the year at Transgran Canaria. Transvulcania. Transgran Canaria is where we were. Transvulcania, so they were joint second out there. There's going to be loads of people to talk about, James. I don't know where your head's at, but for me, Jim's the standout favourite. You've got Tom in there as well, and then you've got people like Jermaine Granger, Matthew Blanchard, who are also going to feature. Shame, the only one who's missing off there who I'd really like to see, well, apart from Killian, the GOAT, of course, is Zach Miller not back after going so close last year.
Yeah, I know that he talked about it on social media a bit, and I don't know why he's decided not to come and do some different races, but yeah, he kind of has his reasons, right? He's quite a principled man, so I think he fancied a bit of a change. And after a second place last year, it's not like you have to win to scratch that itch. I mean, he lost to Jim, and we had 1-2 US males, which that was like a huge deal for those guys. And obviously Courtney there as well. I was just clicking on Miguel Heras because we saw him at Transgran Canaria. Is there something cool about people you've actually seen race in person? I follow the sport in terms of like any normal person would, but I'm not massively into all the stats and all the names and stuff. And I just have a lot more connection with people who I've just been to the same events with or raced against or whatever. Definitely, like I say, Dimitri and Tom, second and third seeds. really interested to see how they get on. Like, Dimitri's been running really well, and the difference with Tom this year is he has put a full focus on UTMB, whereas last year he tried to do the double. And like I say, it's just hard. Tom specifically has been putting out some content online recently about working on his weaknesses, one of which was running at night and technical descending in the dark and all that sort of stuff. And he did that at Lavaredo, where Lewis actually went out and crewed him, took a second place, had a lot of learnings. I know he had a tough race, but powered through it. So he's learned a lot from that. And Tom's come back with a vengeance. I think, I don't know, man. I'm going to put my money behind Tom. Obviously, Jim has to be favourite. He's got the experience. The pressure's off. He's done it before. But, I mean, Tom's right there. Tom is right there. Flicking down through here as well. Matthew Blanchard just keeps coming back, keeps almost making it. What do you reckon? Is he going to get on the podium this year?
I'm not sure. He's been quite quiet this year. We know Jermaine Grange has had his problems as well. I think, was it cracked rib or something he had? Or, yeah, he had an accident earlier in the year, obviously partner to Katie Scheid. One person I am interested in who I saw at Lavaredo who beat Tom is Hannah Snenberger, who has won in Lavaredo, I think, was it 3 times now? I think it was.
His race, isn't it?
That's his race. Yeah, so Hannes is here again. Nobody's ever done that Lavaredo and UTMB double either. So that's an interesting one. So he's obviously trying to do that. He's clearly in good shape. I saw he dropped down recently and won another race, a shorter race as well. So he's worked on that. He's been top 8 here before at UTMB. Well, he was 8th last year. So he's got experience of this longer distance. I think he's going to be one to watch. But for me, yeah, probably between Jim, Tom, and I think Matthew Blanchard isn't a bad shout. If you want a safe bet, if you're a betting man, you know, Matthew Blanchard is one of those ones who you just know is probably gonna get yourself on the podium and get the job done. But even people like Pau Capel, like ranked down there, not even in the top 10 ranked in terms of points, and previous winner here. So the field is deep all across the board. I think probably where we wrap things up here, I certainly touch on, is how deep the fields are becoming now at UTMB. It really is becoming the world champs, of almost the unofficial world champs, Olympics, whatever you want to call it, of the mountain and trail running scene. Everybody and pretty much anybody is here, and the sponsors want to be here. They want their athletes to be here, and that is making these fields super competitive. So much so, I'm going to say probably the deepest fields we've ever had. We're just missing 2 of the greatest ever, which I wish you were here, Courtney Dauwalter and, of course, Kilian Jornet.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's going to be an incredible weekend of racing. I like that I get to get mine. Well, it's even nicer for you. You get yours out of the way on Tuesday, and then you can enjoy being a spectator. Can't wait to do mine on the Thursday, but it'd be really cool to then come in and see the results and follow CCC and UTMB. I think a few shout outs for friends of the podcast and kind of just more local interest. Obviously, we've got Luke Grenfell-Shaw in CCC, had an amazing result last year. He's in incredible form. His podcast on the RunThrough Trails channel is going to be coming out next couple of days. Insane story. So follow Luke, absolute legend. Wish him the best. He's in with a good chance. He is in shape. Also, we've got Tom Jolie, who is racing UTMB. He finished top 10 last year. No, top 20. He was like 16th or something. He's put a lot on social media recently about learning about pacing strategies and what he wants to do differently. I know he's given it a lot of thought, and he was really cool to talk to. He's also in really good shape. He's been out here practicing on the course, so keep your eyes on Tom Jolie as well. Chris Jones, we already touched on, and obviously Tom Evans is going to be right up there. I'll throw in a wild card as well. Lewis's wife, Gemma. I mean, she's in great form. She's had a really good year of racing, and she's in OCC for the first time, taking on this type of course. She's done this distance before, maybe not quite this length of time, not this level of technicality, but she is in shape and she's very strong on the climbs. Descending's improved massively, so I'm genuinely really excited to see how Gemma gets on. As long as she doesn't beat me, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, thanks for that one, James. She's in good nick, and Kate Avery also goes in that race. I think it's Kirsten Welsh from the Elite Trail team is also in there. There's a few other from the Elite Trail team. I want to give them a shout out again, friends of the podcast, and wish Doug and all the team who've put in loads of support for that team, getting everybody on the line. I know Robert goes in the UTMB as well.
We've got Josh Wade in CCC, I think Keith Wigley in UTMB. I mean, everyone's it.
Yeah, everybody and anybody. And sorry if we've missed anybody. There's always a lot of names to remember, and we've got to go through a heck of a long list, and we've only got a limited amount of time, and there's obviously a lot of noise in the background stuff, but we thought we just wanted to get our heads together, give you a bit of an insight into what's going on, and also just be honest about our thoughts, get our cards out on the table. Where do we feel the wins are going to go? to finish off, then let's have a prediction for each of the races. So we'll start off men's OCC in 2 words.
Remy Benet.
Ooh, interesting.
Changed.
Really?
I bought the Salomon vest.
He's all in. Well, that's kind of nicked. Can I really say the same person? All right, I'm going to go with a huge shout here. Chris Jones. Okay, that's
impossible, mate.
That's a big shout. So there you go, Chris. I've laid it out for you, and if you're listening, Doug, I'm backing you. Come on, Elite Trail team. Women's side, OCC.
Judith Weeder.
Yeah, I'm going to go Judith as well. If she's got over an illness, I think I was interested if Ingrid Kaspersen was in there as well, but she's not on the start list anymore, which is a shame. But yeah, CCC women. Okay, I'm going to kick us off because you keep nicking, but I don't know if we'll vary here. Tony McCann for me.
I mean, I was going to say the same thing. I just really fancy her chances. I know it's a big step up, but especially the fact that she won the race that is the second half of that course this year. If she can pace it right and do it intelligently, and the team she's got around her, the Terex team, there's so much experience. I mean, just having Petter, Tom Evans, Joshua and Robbie, all these guys, I'm going to have to, it's boring, but Tony McCann.
Okay, men's side of things, I think this is a tricky one. I am going to go with, and he got the better of his training partner out in Western States, but I don't know why. I've just got a feeling Dan Jones is going to do one this time. I'm going to go Dan Jones.
Yeah, no, Dan Jones has been in great form. I'm going to go Petter Engdahl. I just think he'll be so motivated to come back. And there's something about being the not reigning champion, but previous champion course record holder. I know he's not had the run he wanted at Western States. But the injuries he's had as well they've been like falls and broken bones and stupid stuff. It's not like Petter Engdahl.
Yeah, it's not clicked for him this year, has it quite? But is this the time it clicks for him? Okay, start off with the women for UTMB. I am going to go with Katie Scheid. I think she's in a league of her own at the minute. I think she has elevated herself up onto almost at Courtney's level with that run at Western States. I think she's standout favourite, and I think she gets the job done.
Yeah, I've got to agree. Like, to me, that's the number one shout. And it might be because I've been listening to a lot of the Coop cast and she's coached by him. But yeah, I think Katie Scheid could do this for sure.
And on the men's side, I feel like we should go different for this. And my head says Jim Walmsley. My heart says Tom Evans. But I'm going to go with, just to do the double for the first time ever, I'm going to go with Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give this one to Tom. I think how he performed at Western States last year, the way he approaches his training and the things he's saying all the right stuff. And he's certainly got the capability of doing it. And obviously he's British, so let's back him. And I think Tom.
Well, that's the message we're going to end on. We are backing the Brits. So come on, the Brits. We hope you do well. We hope everybody does well at UTMB, whether you're here doing it for your first time, whether you're just here to do it as a bit of fun, whether you're here to embrace the atmosphere and support people out on course. We hope you enjoy the week. If you're tuning in at home, go on to the Live Trail app to follow the tracker. Then it's a great app. We've been using it there. And as James says, you can track along and it'll update all the results on there. You can go onto UTMB Live on the website, and you can also go onto YouTube and you can follow the races on there. And I promise you, once you switch on that Thursday for the OCC, 7:15 UK time, you will be glued, and then you'll want that stream to keep coming back on. Thursday for the OCC, Friday morning for the CCC, Friday night for the UTMB, into Saturday afternoon, and I can't wait. So thanks again for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that bonus episode. As always, enjoy your training, enjoy your racing, and we'll see you all again very, very soon.